Hey guys, and welcome back to Rage Gaming. My name is Hollow, and today I want to talk a bit of Armored Core. We are just days away from the Tokyo Game Show for 2022, this September 15th, which is likely the staging ground for many major announcements. In the past, Fromsoftware have made their own reveals and announcements at this exact show, and I feel we're a bit overdue now for news from the dev team. Officially, there's a major project in the works, and has been for years. And I'm not talking about Elden Ring because we know it isn't that. As of only a couple months back, Miyazaki himself said that it is near completion. The unannounced title is in, quote, its final stages of development. But what is that title? What game are they about to release that they've been working on alongside Elden Ring? Well, we can't say for certain, but what we do know is that it certainly seems like it could be Armored Core. They've had job listings for robot art and mech design for a while now, and FromSoftware does in fact have a history with that concept, that being Armored Core. A mech fight in which the player designs their own mech to take on missions and progress a story from the perspective of a pilot. The last Armored Core game was a while back now though, back in 2013, which followed on from the fifth main game, Armored Core 5, which released 10 years ago back in 2012. Could that soon-to-be announced title actually be Armored Core and its return at last? It seems very possible. So if you're like me and a huge fan of FromSoftware and want to know a bit more about what could potentially be a massive return series for this dev team, then I put together a little overview of Armored Core and what it once was. So let's take a look. Armored Core was a 23-entry series by FromSoftware, including all of the outside main releases. Before the success of Demon's Souls and the following Soulsborne series, Armored Core was actually their main series of games. You see, originally their first game was released for Armored Core back in 1997, making it all the way to 2013 before we stopped seeing new titles. It was a third-person mech-focused action game, allowing you to create and massively customize your ideal mech. You'd use a massive list of guns, rockets and cannons, and even mecha-style swords to take on different enemies. The missions and combat was often set in destroyed war zones, deserts, or even ruined cities, while you control a surprisingly mobile mech, sliding and flying and jumping around the combat. Now, as someone who never tried the games, I've heard plenty of stories about the difficulty of the controls themselves, with so many weapons to actually manage, whether you're using both different arms for different reasons and also the shoulders as well, let alone the movement. It doesn't seem the most intuitive system, but obviously possible. That sounds like familiar FromSoftware to me, especially old FromSoftware, looking at games like Demon's Souls and Dark Souls 1, which were a lot more clunky than the current games as we know them today. They've come a huge distance for fluidity and satisfying controls. If they're going to bring the game forward, a major aspect is going to be making the basic mechanics and control of these mechs to feel a lot better to play and a lot more welcoming to new players. Now, the missions I watched from different gameplay were centered around defeating enemy targets in a large area. So large you might need to scan the area to reveal their hiding places, or be very cautious in your approach because you could be dealing with a lot of enemies at once. Mid-mission, you could find workstations to repair or further change your mech based on the situation, but it was far from just a single-player game. You could play in squads for multiplayer against AI or online against other players, which is where the game seemed to shine the most for me in terms of watching the gameplay. Dealing with insane team-based battlefields of mechs versus mechs, very aerial at that, much more tactics and skill was involved in the PvP that I saw. I found the gameplay and the concept neat, but since it is over a decade old, it clearly needs some updates. It has aged. I would want to see overhauls of the core gameplay and the systems, though I could see old fans of the series maybe just wanting an up-to-date version of what they once played, which is fair and valid. So that was old Armored Core. What about new potential Armored Core? Back in 2016, there was an apparent confirmation that Armored Core had not been abandoned as a series by Miyazaki himself. He stated that although it was a difficult situation for the series right now, it won't end with Verdict Day. That was the last title. At that time, 3 major games were in development. One was Sekiro. Now we know the second one was Elden Ring. And then there was still that third unknown major title that is now near completion. Then we had this leak at the start of this very year. Potentially not real, but it was by someone called Red Licorice. Apparently FromSoftware had performed some customer surveys that this user had taken part in. It described a new Armored Core game with the description of its concept, some screenshots, and even 30 seconds of gameplay. Now, I'm not going to show any of that in this video, but the images show some cool looking mechs, a variety of environments compared to the more same-ish environments of the old games, and a lot of impressive VFX. The images were hugely watermarked though, so it's hard to make them out clearly, but whatever it was, seemed to be an up-to-date and potentially current-gen Armored Core. The description of the game, by comparison, was much less exciting. It sounded like a vague copy of that space opera series, Dune. Here's the description in short. A substance known as melange has insane potential to advance human society, and the government, corporations, and cultists, also money-hungry mercenaries, are all fighting to get their hands on it, all on one planet, Bashtar. Certainly sounds like they're after that spice, Bashtar sounding quite like Arrakis. Now, aside from that kind of bland description, the description of the game itself sounds familiar. A third-person shooter, a mecha action game, allowing movement for an overwhelmingly scaled map that represents a unique sci-fi world of dynamic mech action, facing strong enemies and fierce battles of both long and short range using both guns and blades. Sounding much like the original series, but perhaps with greater scope. It also promised three-dimensional movement thanks to the unique mobility of a mech, and high degrees of customization to completely reconfigure body parts and weapons in order to upgrade your mech. Now, between the 2016 interview and the recent 2022 interview, and this potential real or fake leak, as well as those job listings to do with this concept, I think it's very likely that, yeah, Armored Core, a new version, is on the menu at some point. The question is when? Could it truly be that upcoming, nearly complete major title to be announced soon? Or is that something totally different, and Armored Core is just going to come back later? But that is my overview of the old Armored Core and this potential new one. What do you think? Is this something you'd even be interested in? Obviously, it's different to what we've seen from the Soulsborne series. Looking back, I don't think the old style of games was exactly my thing, but I could see the appeal if done well. You know, a current gen, more up-to-date and open experience compared to the originals, that's something I could be interested in. I look to, say, the Titanfall series and think of Fromsoftware making something like that, and that excites me. There's been some recent unfounded rumors that they're going to make this more current version of Armored Core a bit more relatable or similar to what we know from the Soulsborne series. That would make sense to me personally, because, you know, they're hoping to bring back the series, make it much more relevant. They're now much bigger than they used to be 10 years ago as a company, Fromsoftware. After Elden Ring, there's a lot of eyes on them. What are they going to do next? And as it seems, they've been working on this potential Armored Core for 6 years. There is even some further weird evidence that occurred recently. The official Fromsoftware website had this seeming bug or potential accident where when you looked at it in a Google search, instead of saying, you know, the normal line of the Fromsoftware website, it literally just said Armored Core, which is very strange. Maybe someone was making some changes in prep for a potential soon announcement at a Tokyo Game Show. Or maybe that was completely fabricated and someone just made this up. Like I said, a lot of rumors. You should take it all with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of potential here and it does feel right. But we are left with the questions of, is this the game they've been working on? And will it be announced? Maybe even super soon at the Tokyo Game Show. For now though, that is the video. If you've enjoyed it and like to see me make more content like this in the future, when I can, well then drop a like. But otherwise, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.